Hey everyone, Brett Tremblay back with another episode of Between Two Friends. And today I'm really fired up to have a special guest on our show with us today. His name is Blake Conrarty, and he is an author of a book called Millennial Millionaire. And thanks for joining on, man. Really appreciate having you.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Tell us a little bit more about yourself. Give us kind of a background.
I'm 29 years old, square in the millennial generation, and basically got the inspiration to write this book after I realized hitting $1 million in net worth before the age of 30 was possible. And that all comes from basically having a background of starting off with almost nothing at age 21, which zero net worth at that point is actually a pretty big advantage compared to most millennials, with significant student debt.
Yeah.
And it took pretty crazy combination of things to make that happen, with me getting a decent scholarship, going to a state school, working through school, etc. But then started my first job making, 55K a year in a pretty low cost of living city. Decided to start saving up money, splitting rent with a couple of roommates and doing everything I can. But ultimately, I think it was really focusing on increasing income over time and finding a few side hustles that made me money in addition to my day job that really made the difference. And I wanted to share my journey and basically give some tips to those who could help buck the trend of the industry here and get millennials some more wealth.
This is awesome. There's a lot to unravel here, and I'm excited about all of it. First of all, I like that you put, millionaire in the name of the book. It jumps out at you. Like, I guarantee when we post this, people are gonna kind of do a double take, right? So that's smart on your part. But second of all, there were a lot of people lamenting the fact that, well, we can't just go buy a house and it's not the same in the generation. And I wish I started with no debt. And we start with all these student loans, but you took a different track. I mean, you're like, well, I don't need to go buy a house. I'm gonna just save up for, it sounds like, less than 10 years and create some net worth for myself. And that's it. I like the no excuse mentality. So if that's what you want to do, that's amazing. I just like that you kind of do things differently, and then you package them all in a book and said, here's how you can do it too. I really respect it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think taking the different path and not following the traditional, buy a home and go into more debt after the student loans and all of that was definitely a big differentiator for me. Millennials have about 40% less net worth than boomers at the same age. The average millennial run household has a net worth of just $11,000. So it's not a great starting place. And I think the big trend that I advocate for is for people to really take control of their own careers and to do it as early as possible. Because the earlier you start earning that additional money, the more you can save it. And then you have the compounding over time, all the great effects that will lead you to get rich at some point in life, maybe not in 10 years, but at least in some point.
How do you define millionaire? Because is it making a million in a year? Is it making a million over a set amount of time, or is it having a million in the bank? Or, and you said net worth. So what's kind of your definition of being a millionaire?
The definition I'm going by is net worth. You take your assets minus your liabilities. So how much do you have in savings, in your house if you've been paying down a house, in your investment vehicles, which is the big portion for me. I've channeled pretty much all of my money that I can into investments, into the stock market. And you take all of that, subtract out any debt you have on your house, student loans, et cetera. Then you have your net worth, which is how I'm defining a million.
Other people will argue till they're dead in the face. Look, I have a business that I could easily sell for over a million, so technically I'm a millionaire. But most people really define it as, but that's unrealized money. Like, you need to have it in equity in your home or investments, right? That you can see the money, or in your bank account. So,
Yep.
okay.
Yeah, there's definitely a liquidity aspect to it, which I have some stock in a startup company that I worked at, and I value that currently at $1 in my net worth spreadsheet because it could be worth something, it could be worth zero, but I'm not banking on it.
Got it. Okay, that's fair. So, look, tell us about the formula and kind of what you did in your story, because on the back of your book, you have optimized your financial life, and it says one, income, two, expenses, and three, investments. So
It's really focused on the three things that you have control over in your financial life. First is income, second is expenses, and third is investments. And the first one that I focus on is income because that is largely neglected in financial books. A lot of people treat that as an input. You know, you make X dollars, how can you save more money? But really, it's income that can have the biggest driver, especially early in your career. So the mindset that I advocate for, and ultimately I think was really useful for me, is managing your career like you manage a business. A lot of people they'll put in decades of work day in and day out, and they'll never take a step back and ask, am I doing everything I can to make as much money as possible, if that's your goal? And ultimately they're not marketing themselves through going out and searching for new jobs. They're not updating their resume and LinkedIn. They're not asking for raises and promotions in their day job like they should. So what I provide here is basically a template to say, you should be looking for jobs at least once every 2 years. Assess, are you being paid at a market rate for your skill set? If you're not, go out, get some offers, maybe get a counter offer from your current company if you don't want to leave. And that way you can increase your salary, 20, 30% every couple of years. And it's a pretty foolproof method for most careers that I found.
oh, that's fascinating. So, and does step one also include side hustles? I think you said something about here about, multiple streams of income, or maybe that's under investments.
Yeah, no, side hustles is definitely in the first group here too. And I think it has two big impacts. One is obviously you can make money doing a side hustle. That's kind of why you start it.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was just trial and error. I had hip hop music website that I started that made a decent amount of money in college. It wasn't my own performances. It was more news and things like that. So paid off some of my rent that way in college, and then ultimately sold it. Made a couple $1,000. Thought I was kind of this big shot entrepreneur after that point, and started a company trying to sell protein enhanced beer. That did not go so well,
Oh, wow.
as you might be able to guess. So ultimately landed on something though that was a lot closer to what I was doing in my day job. So I was working as a statistician, and for my next side hustle, figured out why don't I use my statistical modeling capability to build predictive models for sports betting? And I did that and was very profitable doing that. So a little bit closer to what I was good at in my day job helped me really succeed in my side hustle too. But any of that money you make is on top of what you're already using to cover your expenses. So it's basically free money you can put into your investments that compounds over time.
If any of my friends are listening or still watching this, their ears just perked up. Sports betting, you had me at financial models. So, but let me ask you a little bit more about that. I mean, was this a legitimate thing you're doing? Is this, like out of Vegas, were you handicapping? Or did you have private clients that you had to have extreme disclosures saying, look, I'm not guaranteeing you any money? I mean, you're not in it anymore. Maybe it's because it's kind of can turn into a shady world, but tell us about that.
Can turn into a shady world, and that's ultimately why I got out. But I was investing my own money into sports betting. So this was, a few years ago before it was becoming legal in most states. And at that time, basically the gray area was it's legal for an individual to place a bet. It's not legal for a sports book to take your bet. So what I was doing is betting with like Costa Rican firms and other offshore sports books that the sports books were not operating legally, but I could legally place a bet there and pay my taxes and everything, and be kosher about it. But that came with a lot of risk. So I built this statistical model. I scraped data off a bunch of websites, basically play-by-play data, how other people were betting, used machine learning to create this algorithm that said, I expect this team to win by 4 points and Vegas has them at 2 points. So I'm going to place a bet of X based on how confident I am in that result. And from that was very profitable, and got kicked out of one of the Costa Rican books that I was on. And another one, when I tried to withdraw, got a note that you're now going to have to speak to the owner of the book before you can withdraw, who said, hey, next time I see you, if it's your account or a friend or family, I don't care. Your money is gone. No refunds, no withdrawals, it'll be gone. And that was the end of my sports betting career because I got very nervous about my money just disappearing.
Did you get your money
I,
from the guy?
I did get my money back from him.
Wow.
Yeah, he was good on his word for at least that time, and I expected he would honor his threat there in the future too.
That's well, that's fascinating. This took a fun turn just now.
To be clear, that is not the path that I recommend most millennials go down for their financial life, but that was one of my side hustles that I got into and had very little risk. Ultimately, I put $10,000 total into it to start, and turned out to be good for me. So I think whatever people find, what makes them passionate and can make them money, go for it. Keep it low risk and see what happens.
All right. So these are some of your side hustles, and then what were the next steps you took?
The next one is expenses. And really, what I did here is prioritize spending on what actually makes me happy. So, taking a step back from what you're supposed to buy in terms of you get a new job, you get a nice new car, maybe you put money down on a house, maybe you finance some big renovations you wanted to do or something like that. I realized those types of things didn't actually matter to me and wouldn't increase my happiness. And as I did more research on this, that's kind of backed by science too. There's a Harvard study I referenced in the book that shows the vast majority of people derive greater happiness from experiential purchases rather than buying more stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I prioritize travel. I went to, I think, 12 or 13 different countries during my time from when I was 22 to when I reached the million milestone just a year ago. And I only regret not traveling more. Those were big purchases for me. I spent a lot of money on travel, but ultimately I was then able to save more on some of those big ticket items. I felt fulfilled and really enjoyed that. Didn't have to buy the nice car, things like that. Still driving my 2011 Mazda.
Still to this day.
Yep, 2011 Mazda right now.
Very cool. I mean, that's an interesting lesson because you can look at it like, well, you're trying to save 2 million and you're spending all this money on travel, but it's bringing fulfillment and it's replacing some of those other purchases. I have a friend who's fond of saying, work on the life you want while you're enjoying the life you have. So it's not like you have to hate your life and be miserable and then, oh, one day I'm happy because now I got 999,000 in the bank. This sucks. Now I have 1 million. I'm super happy. I
Yep.
mean, you were enjoying the process as well.
Yeah, I think that's one of the flaws in how most people look at financial independence, retire early. The whole FIRE movement is they see a job as something to escape from, and they put in as many hours and as much work as they can to reach this milestone of financial independence, and they hate their life that whole time. Whereas I think it's a lot better to find that middle ground where you're still enjoying yourself, still accumulating money, and then can retire early. Just maybe not as early as if you killed yourself the whole time to do it.
Right. Right. That makes sense. So, all right. Step number 3 is investments. I don't know if you're a licensed, financial advisor. If not, this comes with a full disclosure. These are just opinions.
I
But
am not. Yeah, this is just opinions.
right. So, what's in your book and what type of financial investments do you recommend people look into?
Yeah, so my book is really targeted at what would someone, a millennial, want to invest in right now. And most millennials are looking at a pretty long investment horizon. You're looking for this to last to your retirement, to continue to grow over that time. And over long time horizons, really nothing beats the stock market. That there is risk there, but the risk is really short term. People think of, oh, stocks are riskier than holding cash in a savings account or riskier than buying bonds, but not over that time horizon. Over the whole 150-year plus history of the stock market, there's been no 30-year period that has had growth below 5%. So you're pretty much, if you're talking 30 years, you're pretty much guaranteed 5% returns. And to me, that is a no-brainer then, that I want as much of my money as possible in the stock market. And that's really what I've done. I haven't picked out individual stock funds. I haven't made it rich betting on Apple or Tesla, although those would have been pretty good bets over the last few years.
Yeah.
I've actually never owned an individual stock. I've bought all index funds that capture the whole market and have low expenses. And that will be better than 95% of actively managed funds. So that's pretty much what I recommend to most people with a long time horizon. Still holding enough cash or bonds so that you can sleep at night. There is a bit of the
Right.
psychological factor there too.
Yeah. I mean, look, hindsight's 2020. March hit. I think everybody was terrified and like, oh my gosh, what do we have in savings? I did invest in April, but not enough. Some of these stocks, like Zoom, which I did get into, but man, if you could put all your money there, it would have been crazy. But that's also gambling. So
Yep.
you're advocating the sort of 30-year horizon.
Yep. Yeah. I think when you look at the 30-year horizon that ultimately most millennials right now are looking at for retirement, betting on the whole market is the way to go. And it's actually less risky than keeping your money in cash, because
Yeah.
keeping your money in cash, you have the risk of not having enough, which not getting any returns on it with inflation, that's a real risk too.
Yeah, but in fact, that's funny. Somebody today, one of my friends in a mastermind group, was making the point. Look, if you're getting 1% on your money from a bank and inflation's 3, 4, 5%, you're losing every year. So you think it's safe, but it's actually not. It's not smart. But everyone needs some cash to hold on to and be ready for. So, all right. Well, Blake, what's next for you? You wrote this book, and sounds like you got a lot of fun things going on and a lot of skill sets with your financial background. So, as you round into your 30s here soon, what do you think the next 5 years brings for you?
Well, my wife is due with our first baby in January, so
Uh,
that's going to be a very exciting and
no
sleepless time
longer
for me.
every parent right now saying, no kids, no wonder.
We have looked into daycare costs already and have worked that into the budget. So will definitely be a hit for us from a cash flow standpoint. But ultimately, I think we're ready for it. Kids are expensive. There's no way around it. But we're in a good financial position now, and
Yeah.
I actually have no short-term desire to retire. I think most people look at that as a milestone to potentially pursue, either retiring to a lower stress job or something like that to let your investment grow and be able to retire fully in 20 years or so. But I enjoy finding complex problems and working on them. So for me, it's really just about continuing to find hobbies that fulfill me and making sure I have that right balance, which I think I'll have less time for hobbies and writing books coming up in about 2 months here.
Absolutely. Look, but speaking of fulfillment, it should also be one of the most fulfilling things that has happened. And well, I don't know the statistics, but I would argue, I would be willing to bet, I should say, 95% of people have children before they're financially ready. And I always tell people, you'll never be financially ready. You'll never be financially ready to be an entrepreneur, to change jobs, to whatever. Like the times now, life's short. You just got to go for it. You're kind of maybe the 5 or the 1%er in that regard, where you truly did make money, and then you had a family. So good for you. That's pretty cool that you had the discipline. And I think as of next year, no, this year, millennials, the oldest ones of us, started turning 40. I turned 39 here pretty quickly. So you're ahead of the game, Blake, and it's been a lot of fun to have you on, man. People want to learn more about you and buy your book. Tell us.
My book's available on Amazon, Millennial Millionaire, or you can go to millennialmillionairebook.com. And my email is blake@millennialmillionairebook.com. So should be pretty easy to remember, but happy to talk personal finances, anyone to run their personal situation by me and just see if I can be of any help.
Millennial Millionaire, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation. Took a lot of fun turns. Thank you for jumping on with me.
Thank you, Brett. It's been great.
All right, take care.